Hi all, I am Jeranipan and I am here to discuss on the topic risk and what are the basic steps in risk analysis. So now let's focus on what is risk. Organizational risk is a potential for losses due to uncertainty. It is a term for risk at the top level of an organization that includes material, strategic, reputational, regulatory, legal, security, and operational risk. Security vulnerabilities and threats. Financial risk such as unstable debt levels. So, that is organizational risk. So, now let's look into what are the basic steps in risk analysis. There are mainly 5 basic steps in risk analysis. So, now let's look into that. The first step in risk analysis is identifying the hazards. The second step is decide how might be harmed and how. And the third step is evaluate the risk and decide on precautions. The fourth step in risk analysis is record your findings and implement them. The last and final step in risk analysis is review your risk assessment and update if necessary. So now let's look into the first step, that is identify the hazards. So for example, in a factory or a workplace, they may use many types of substances for their daily work. So let's assume that in a factory or a workplace, the employees are exploited to the use of some chemicals or substances for their daily work, and the employee get affected by such substances or due to the use of such chemicals. In a factory, there may be many types of employees or workers. They may include young workers, migrant workers, new or expectant mothers, and people with many disabilities. So, they may be affected by the use of such chemicals or other harmful substances. So, the first steps in risk analysis is identifying the hazards. After identifying such a type of hazards, the second step is decide how might be harmed and how. Once we have identified the hazards, decide how likely is it someone could be harmed and how serious it could be. This is assessing the level of risk. We need to decide who might be harmed and how, what we are already doing to control the risk, what further action we need to take to control the risk, and who need to carry out the action and when the action is needed. And the third step in risk analysis is evaluate the risk and decide on its precautions. So, we need to decide how can we get rid of this hazard. Can we get rid of the hazards altogether, or if not, how can we control the risks so that harm is unlikely? We can also further look into redesigning the job, replacing the material or machinery or processes, organizing your work to reduce exposure to the materials, machinery or process, identifying and implementing practical measures needed to work safely, and providing personal protective equipment and making sure workers wear it. So, it is an example for the third step in risk analysis. Now, let's look into the fourth step in risk analysis, that is record your findings and implement them. So, if for example, if we employ 5 or more people, we must record the significant finding which includes the hazard, that is the thing that may cause harm, and who might be harmed and how, and what you are doing to control the risk. And the last and the final step in risk analysis is review our assessment and update if necessary. We must review the control that we have put in place to make sure that everything is working as properly. We should also review if they are no longer be effective. There are changes in the workplace that could lead to new risk, such as changes to staff, process, substance, or equipments used, and also we need to review if the workers have spotted any problems or there have been accidents or near misses as per our above mentioned example. So, it is a 5 basic step in risk analysis. I think the 5 basic steps in risk analysis is clear by the use of above example. So, now let's look into why do we need risk analysis. Risk analysis is a proven way of identifying and assessing factors that could negatively affect the success of a business or project. It allows you to examine the risk that you or your organization face and help you decide whether or not to move forward with a decision. Now, let's look into what is risk. As per ISO, risk is the effect of uncertainty of objectives, whereas risk management is coordinated activities to direct and control an organization with regard to risk. And what is threat? Regarding threat, ISO provides information about its type, that is, physical damage, natural damage, or a technical failure, or so on. And the example includes fire, dust, flood, defective software, and so on. And its origin, which includes intentional, accidental, or so on. Threat is a process that magnifies the likelihood of a negative event, such as the exploit of a vulnerability. Now, let's look into probability of occurring a risk. The probability is the likelihood of an event occurring and the consequences, to which extent the project is affected by an event, are the impacts of risk. By combining the probability and impact, the level of risk can be determined. Now, let's look into the impact. A risk assessment should evaluate both likelihood and impact. The impact is an estimate of the harm that could be caused by an event. For example, a cyber breach could have a catastrophic impact. So, I think the portions, that is risk and the basic step in risk analysis, is clear to you. Thank you.